Well, I'm gonna go build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the park.
Alright, I think I got that out of my system. Let's talk about the RPC Authority. So since the last video I did got a mixed response, I decided to go ahead and do another one. I know a bunch of folk commented in my other video about how I'd better let this stuff drop or else, but or else what is pretty much how I live my life. I'm going to assume that most of my regular viewers are reasonable, and I'm going to create relevant content. So if you visited the wiki in the last few days, you probably noticed a marked lack of rainbow logos, and you may have also noticed that Pride Month is over. Now, one of the biggest things to come out of the staff response to the controversy has been the creation of a brand new wiki with blackjacks and hookers, and god damn it, I thought I was past it, but I guess I'm not. Now, knowing what I know, I can see why someone started the RPC Authority wiki. I mean, there's a large contingent of wiki users who have been dissatisfied with the wiki for a long time. I mean, pretty much since Series 3 started to really take off. Talk to any group of off-site fans and the number one complaint you're likely to get is that the SCP Wiki isn't doing a good job of staying true to what the SCP Wiki is supposed to be about. And if you think that's a nebulous claim, don't worry, most of them will tell you what they mean is they'd like to see more Series 1 style articles. I mean, technically, Series 1 has all kinds of articles, from long narrative-based ones to just an object, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, there's a bunch of people who are already feeling disaffected. Now, to be fair, the inclusiveness, or the Pride logo, or the moderator response to it wasn't why everyone who went to the RPC Authority did so. I mean, at best, it just served as a catalyst to finally push a large, already extant group to move on. And these people maybe just didn't know that there was a whole bunch of other people who thought the same way they did. It's like that bad relationship where neither of you are happy, but you keep it together just because you've spent years trying to make it work already. And then if you give up now, you're admitting that you're a failure and all that time was wasted and your friends are right. You absolutely are not ready for a relationship, and I think I may be projecting here. Look, there's a big collection of people with various different reasons to leave and start their own wiki, and the sad part is, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it can really lead to some decent stories over time as those writers improve, but there's a really big elephant in the room regarding this topic. Since the catalyst for this was about LGBT issues, the RPC Authority is going to be connected with those issues for a long time. And members of the RPC Authority who aren't bigots are going to feel defensive anytime it's brought up. I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of rage still simmering over how staff handled things during the controversy. Hell, I have my own history of staff mistreatment that I won't bother going into right now, but suffice to say, I'm full of my own rage at some of them. But I've always ascribed to the idea that you can't fix something by throwing stones at it from the outside. If you want to fix something, you gotta be inside it to do it. I mean, I guess unless you're building a big pile of stones. Actually, now that I look at it, you probably wouldn't want to throw stones at that either. Despite there being non-bigoted reasons for people to go to the RPC Authority, I can say with some certainty after a few days reading their Discord and reading their forums, that there is a large and vocal contingent of bigots who've gone over and started writing there as well. And a lot of these are the "lighten up, it was a joke" crowd that we've all encountered before. Here's my real issue with this. I don't fault people for being in the presence of bigots. It's the difference between being in the presence of a bigot and not knowing it, and knowing it and being okay with it. I mean, hell, if you don't want to police language, I understand where you're coming from. I can actually sort of respect the principles behind that, even if I think it generally leads to a toxic community. The thing with any community is that constant arguments are always bad for growth and enjoyment. It's why the logo controversy was such a big deal. And most folk would love to err on the side of free speech, but if you do that, you need to allow for people to call out hate speech. It's not censorship for someone to say, "I find that offensive," but then you say it, and then the other guy tries to defend their offensive statements when there really isn't anything to defend against. If somebody's offended, they're offended. You're not going to be able to change it by making an argument about how it was just a joke or they need to lighten up, because that's not going to change their fundamental being. But then people get into these long, drawn-out arguments that just take up every minute of every day, and suddenly nobody's doing anything other than arguing about those things. And most communities will come to a conclusion with that. You can either ban the words and behaviors that people find offensive, or you can ban people from speaking up when they're offended. But the thing is, both of those options are restrictions on free speech. So if you do either of them, you're no longer standing on free speech principles. At that point, you're just making a decision about the health of your community, and at some point the RPC Authority will have to make that call if they're truly going to be welcoming to all kinds of writers. Now, enough generalities. I'm going to talk some specifics here because the RPC Authority Discord has been around for about 2 weeks at the time I'm recording this, and I can search out very specific stats on their Discord for uses of particular words, so I'm going to go over a few of them real quick. I found 365 uses of the N-word. That's about once per hour. I searched a number of derogatory terms for transsexuals, and I found about 407 uses, which is still about once an hour. There were various derogatory terms for homosexual individuals at 589 uses, which is a little less than twice an hour. I could actually go on, but I don't think I need to. Those numbers are also likely skewed a bit with regard to the frequency you might encounter them right now, because the server is more populous and active now than it was 2 weeks ago. The important thing for you to understand if you are thinking about going over there is that you're going to see racist, sexist, homophobic, and transphobic behaviors, and also a lot of folks saying that it's just words, not behaviors, lighten up. And also very few people over there seem to be willing to call it out as destructive. This is probably going to change over time, and I actually did see a small number of people taking a stand against some of the worst behavior. Now, the SCP Wiki wasn't a welcoming committee at the start either, but as the admins aged and the user base shifted to more mainstream and less niche, it became more welcoming of a community. Now, if the RPC Authority is still here in 10 years, which I'm not going to put money on, I would think that there'll be a brand new contingent of people angry about how the RPC Authority has betrayed its origin and needs to be taken back or whatever. But the truth of the matter is the SCP Wiki already went through the maturing phase, so I'm actually not thinking myself that I'm ever going to bother with something new, especially if they don't offer anything substantial content-wise. Right now, they strike me as a bootleg SCP Foundation with a fairly toxic community, like a SCP site for people who don't like SCPs anymore. I don't think they're going to go away, but SCPs are already niche content. The main wiki has worked hard to broaden its appeal and has seen some fairly good popular success for it. The SCP Wiki is close to cracking the mainstream at this point. But if the RPC Authority remains as simply a niche of a niche, it's never going to outgrow its cradle. What we're talking about is the difference between immediacy and legacy. The RPC Authority can, maybe in the moment, have something real, though right now, just 2 weeks in, they don't yet. But think about what their legacy is going to be 10 years down the road. If they carve out their own identity, they'll stop being competition and become something more of a contemporary. I mean, George R.R. Martin and Stephen King are not competitors, they're just both writers. And something like that's the ideal situation, because them trying to compete with a 10-year-old SCP Foundation is only going to end in meh. But if the RPC Authority can put together solid content that appeals outside of their own niche, like the SCP Foundation has done by changing in the exact ways that a lot of those people on the RPC Authority hated, we're all going to win. I just don't know if they've got what it takes to get there.
Oh, no room for Bender, huh? Fine. I'll go build my own lunar lander with blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the lunar lander and the blackjack. Screw the whole thing.
If you made it through the video without hitting the dislike button in a rage and closing the tab, hit the subscribe button to see more, and follow me on Twitter at @DCimmerian. Thanks for watching.